that first spirit being who walked the earth, he said to the Creator, you know, when the humans come along, how are they going to communicate with you? Out of the quiet came this voice that said, I will be the one. I will be the one to sacrifice myself for the humans. I will be the intermediary. And that someone was that tobacco plant.
The Great Spirit said, "Now from here on, you're going to respect this tobacco." And he would pray with it.
Asking the Supreme Being to guide us, and we see calling as help, but not as a weakness, but a strength.
Tobacco has always been a part of our culture.
Tobacco is that medicine for our heart and our soul, something that you should honor and respect.
When I was a young man, and I should have been learning these ways, it was illegal.
It was against the law for us to practice our religion. The only way that we could do it was to smoke commercial tobacco.
And that's just been going on for so many years. That's what people are used to.
So I almost feel like a connection to...
American Indians in the Northern Plains, including Minnesota, have the highest smoking rates of American Indians anywhere across the country.
It's been marketed to us. We've been targeted in our communities.
And even though today we know how harmful it is to us, addiction's a powerful thing.
People intend well, and they give you the commercial stuff, and what are you going to do? Say, no thanks, I don't want it, when they're asking you a spiritual favor. So we got to teach them ahead of time before they offer it.
We have a responsibility to make a better, healthy environment for our children just by reminding the community again, over and over, that tobacco is sacred.
Chinchasha is the inner layer of the red willow.
Cha is wood, and shasha means red, red. Before you do anything, a tobacco has to be exchanged or placed on the earth for Mother Earth.
When we offer a prayer, giving thanks for this red willow to give its life, to give us this medicine. Our tobacco is a part of a tree, and we use it for our pipes, we use it for offerings, for all the ceremonies, and that's our first medicine.
Bejigo Asema, tobacco first. Asema then is the way in which we communicate with Ngije Manadu, the Great Spirit. We communicate with all the spirits using Asema because that's what that means, you know, from me to you.
Traditional tobacco, or Asema, is what you offer. It's an offering when you say your prayers, or when you gather medicine, or when you go on a trip, or when you need help.
Tobacco offerings can be made in many ways, simply by taking a little bit of it and going outside, and you know, as the sun's coming up, you know, you address the grandfather sun, you address our Mother Earth, you know, you can address those four directions. And you simply, once you're done speaking, you know, you take your tobacco and you put it on the ground.
Our people, the most valuable people in our Indian communities, were those who understood Mother Earth, because that's where all the healing came from. So the healers were our critical people. European people believe that the most valuable person is the person that has the most material wealth. And they'll make money off of us any way they can.
Well, tobacco is probably one of the most exploited plants that came from this hemisphere. When the Spaniards visited the Caribbean islands, you know, they seen the Taino, the Arawak. People doing was they would take one of those leaves and they would roll it up. And they would put it in their mouth and they would take a puff and they would blow that smoke up. When Spaniards took that first puff of that, tobacco, they didn't know how to use it, right? So they inhaled it, and so the heart started beating fast a little bit, and they probably got a head rush, and they liked that, right? And so they wanted to share that with people in Europe. They went to Africa, and they stole the people there, and then they brought them to stolen land and had them grow the tobacco, which then they took to Europe. And they brought that variety of plant to North Carolina, Virginia, and they planted it, and they needed more and more land. Native people just kept getting pushed farther west of the Mississippi.
I am the tribe's commercial tobacco prevention coordinator. It's my job to lead and to show these younger kids what our traditional tobacco is. We will take a knife, a sharp knife, and scrape this outer red layer to get down to this green, which is the chinchasha. This chinchasha is who you are. So how you take the time to make it and harvest it tells about yourself. And that's what our traditional tobacco is. This powwow that we're having here, the Veterans Powwow, is a commercial tobacco-free powwow. We'll be using traditional tobacco instead of commercial tobacco.
Chub Lake is here.
Well, thank you for being the MC.
In our traditional way, it's like a tobacco and a handshake was a promise that I will do what you asked me to do.
There's a lot of families that don't know what traditional tobacco is, and they see at gatherings that people will use commercial tobacco, so they assume that is what we use.
And this is more commercial tobacco.
Up until the last 4 or 5 years, it was all you saw for everything. Taking it right out of a package of, commercial tobacco package and using it for everything. Prayers, blessings, whatever.
These are all commercial pipe tobacco. This is rolling tobacco. And this is the tobacco made commercially. This is traditional tobacco that was used by our ancestors before commercial tobacco came into existence.
And it's to educate and target the youth to stay away from commercial tobacco through cultural preservation.
My goal is to get everything smoke-free. So far, I have got the tribal building smoke-free, the vehicle smoke-free, 25 feet from the door smoke-free. The work that I do in tobacco control is secondhand smoke policy change and education. And I work on getting them not to smoke in their homes, their cars, their workplaces, and then offer them cessation help. I'm out at every event I can collaborate with, so we're trying to educate them to use the traditional tobacco, the red willow, instead of using a cigarette. I promote the traditional tobacco teachings by actually doing hands-on demonstrations. That's how I learn, and I know that's how a lot of others learn. So I actually harvest the red willow from my backyard and just go out with the knife and the red willow and show people how to do it themselves. So we just try to change our message all the time so people don't get, oh, there she is again with her lung, We try to mix it up.
We have a couple other artists.
My good friend Wendy Savage, who was an artist, and I planned an art show. We thought this would be a great idea.
The title is called Asema, the Vessel of Connection. Traditional tobacco, or asema, is the vessel that we use for our prayers. And so every artist is going to do their interpretation on keeping tobacco sacred. As the curator of the show, I have to make sure that all the other artists are on board.
Okay, let's get that ordered.
Wendy said, hey, do you want to be a part of the show? It's about keeping tobacco sacred. That just sounded like a good thing for me. So I agreed to do it. She didn't really give me any direction on what to paint. She just said, here's the theme, go. I'd like to think that me participating in this show is a small part, but the show itself plays a bigger part of the movement, making a difference in the community by having people see this stuff and hopefully getting their wheels turning. The piece that I'm creating for the Festival of Connection show, it's a spoof on the Trail's End. That's an image of a Native American sort of slumped over in his saddle, and he's at the end of his trail. I've replaced that character with a cowboy, the Marlboro Man in particular, kind of signifying that it's, you know, it's that trail is coming to an end, hopefully. Just added some other elements that speak to mortality in there, such as skulls and arrows.
And we hope it becomes a communication vessel to let everybody know, here, this is what we're doing on Fond du Lac. What can you in your community do to add on to this?
I feel the latent effects of assimilation in a city native raised by bright light skyscrapers. Born with dim prospects, little peace in living as a child. Hot-headed about the fact I wasn't wild like they called my ancestors. Imagine what it'd be to live nomadic off the land and free. Instead, I was full of heat like a furnace, cause I wasn't furnished with the language and traditional ways of my peeps. Yeah, I used to feel like I wasn't truly indigenous. Now I say me which, get your money.
What we're trying to do is instill in these young people who live here in the urban area, this is who you are, and this is a way to be healthy today.
Colonization has affected our health in many different ways, such as diet. You know, we have a high rate of diabetes. And so the smoking on top of that, on top of these other factors, just totally has devastated our community. So it's important that they see the real honorable way to use tobacco in the way that Creator gave it to us.
And so what we're really all about is creating a healthy community where our young people can be active and learn about their culture, learn about their identity, and play lacrosse. Lacrosse has really become inaccessible. It's an indigenous game. It's part of our culture. It's part of our spirituality. It's part of our identity.
And the way that we're taught is that we play for Creator when we play this game. And tobacco really helps that process to focus our youth and our coaches and our families together. So we pray with it. We pray with chanshasha. We teach them about holding it in their left hand so that it's close to their heart. We're bringing blessings upon ourselves, but we ask them to use the tobacco and put it out at the goalposts.
We're putting down a prayer, not only for what we're about to do, which is to partake in the Bagadaway or Tecopsiccha game, but also to honor Creator and to think of those who have gone before us and to thank them for allowing us to come together in this old way.
When I was a young man, people didn't realize. They thought all tobacco was tobacco. You know, nobody could teach them there was a specific kind and what this tobacco is doing to us. Almost everybody smoked, everybody.
Our people deal with life, pain, anger, with either laughter or medicating themselves. Boarding school, reservations, the trauma that was done to your parents, to your grandparents, and it's passed down. A way of coping, a way of dealing.
At that time, there was like a depression that had sort of settled across Indian country because, you know, here were people who lived in the environment. There were no boundaries, and they were confined to a very small area that could not support them.
They put us on land that the government didn't want. Like, this reservation here is a lot of gravel pits. And the government back then didn't think it was good because it wasn't good for farming.
We had one multi-story building on the entire reservation. The multi-story building was the agent's building.
I still know like people who remember having a ceremony at night and having to put blankets up on the windows so if somebody was going by they wouldn't see light. Because what were people doing up at midnight, right? Oh, they must be having a ceremony. They would send the Indian agent out and the tribal police and they would round people up and take them to jail where they'd stay overnight, and then the next day they would harangue them about letting go of those pagan ways. If there was anything that frightened the European settlers, it was our spirituality. As a result of that, then there was a law that was passed that made it illegal for indigenous people to practice our ceremonial ways. And so in the North, we all used tobacco. And so the only way we could practice our ceremonies then was to use commercial tobacco products.
Just not being able to be who you are until 1978 is a big thing. And it's tough waking up to that. Living in that two worlds, we tend to lead ourselves to addiction to cope with that.
Today, a number of Indians are moving away from the reservations to try to settle in cities. Most of them go to New York, Chicago, Denver, and Los Angeles. The government sponsors this move and pays their way.
Even the legal breaking up of our families in all those ways really took away our understanding of Mother Earth.
Nobody should feel guilty about that, but that was a deliberate thing, to really rob us of our spirituality. And so for a lot of us, we don't know about traditional tobacco.
The intergenerational grief has led us to really buy into those messages, to try to self-medicate.
And so tobacco use, suicide, alcohol, all of those go into to cover up that trauma because it's hurt, it's pain, it's anguish.
It's hard to see at some of our traditional gatherings the use of commercial tobacco in the cigarette form.
At some events, I've seen cigarettes put in baskets and given out at the funerals.
During our annual powwow, they'll hand out pipe tobacco, commercial tobacco to the drums.
Also, you have a lot of people that think smoking a cigarette, well, I can smoke this cigarette because it's traditional. Well, they're buying into the commercialism. It's not traditional. You didn't smoke every 10, 15 minutes because you wanted to. You're smoking because you're addicted to the chemicals and the sugar.
Tobacco by itself has a little bit of a bite to it. It's a little harsh. So they had to do things to it, right, to manipulate it, to make it palatable. And so they added all these things to it, like sugars and syrups and over 5,000 chemicals in that cigarette or that commercial tobacco that people are using.
And young people who are not really sure what it means to be Indian, it kind of encourages them to take it. Maybe I'll be more Indian if I smoke this stuff because it's got a picture of an Indian or an Indian implement on it.
And they target young people because the only way that they can stay in business, right, is to grow a new batch of consumers.
So many of the impacts that we've seen in our community have been the high rates of cancer.
And that rate of smoking is 59% of adults currently smoke cigarettes. That's almost 4 times the 14% rate of Minnesota general population. So what we've been working on at the American Indian Cancer Foundation is really raising awareness about cancer being an Indian issue. Of course, cancer is an issue for all populations, but I think a lot of times we're not thinking about it as an Indian health concern. And what's happened in the last 20 years is that cancer rates have increased to the point where it's now the leading cause of death for American Indian women nationally. At the same time, cancer mortality rates have gone down for every other population.
We know that tobacco is a huge issue facing our communities that causes a lot of disparate disease burden. So we know that community engagement is really critical to forming and shaping policies that are really relevant and good fit for each community based on their needs and their readiness for change. And some of the successes that we've seen are the implementation of smoke-free workplaces and foster homes and boundaries where people cannot smoke within 25 or 50 feet of a building. The messaging is important as well as just a continuous community voice.
we're able to have a voice and create that material to specifically apply to our people. It's important to include visuals and images that resonate with the community. So maybe it's a family, American Indian family, that is on that material and not some of these stock images that other, I guess, mainstream organizations create.
Like the mural on the Indian Center and imagery that's familiar to us, that's hopeful. And I think that seems to resonate much better.
I see generations. The message and the images that were actually installed by Native artists on the murals, that was collectively determined by young people in the community. Our host planning team with the Native Youth Alliance of Minnesota played a really critical role in terms of facilitating a conversation.
We had 2 community conversations, one here at the American Indian Center and Little Earth.
They brought over 60 young people together to talk about this issue of commercial tobacco use and traditional tobacco use in Native communities.
We helped contribute to the actual mural itself. At the top says I see generations, and then at the bottom says keep tobacco sacred, which is supposed to be a traditional pipe.
It's so beautiful, like, it's really hard to miss. It's very large, and I just hope it really gets to people thinking about their actions and things like that.
I pray that those images give our children life, and they give our children hope.
I hope that we continue to do this work and that it doesn't just stop here.
We want them to go to their traditional teachings first before they decide to utilize alcohol or decide that maybe their life isn't worth living, because we're much more than statistics. We're a thriving, rich nation. And sometimes, we get lost in the narratives about disparities. And, we are much more than that. We're powerful.
Well, we had the grand opening of the show, SEMA, the Vessel of Connection, and we had a wonderful turnout. I'm sure we had over 300 people. We had 7 artists, some contemporary artists as well as some traditional artists. Artists I handpicked that have a commitment to the younger generation.
This painting is the one that I made for this show. I wanted to do a spoof of the End of the Trail painting. I thought I would turn it around and do a Marlboro Man version of it. So I put the Marlboro Man in there.
See, I saw him right away.
Yeah. Somebody else suggested that I paint the arrows to look like cigarettes. So that's why they have orange tips on them. And so it's like a Marlboro Man.
We had a lot of public education on how to use tobacco sacredly and keeping it traditional. And we also had another man showing how to scrape the bark from willow. And then we were also doing some small tobacco ties, which is another offering for when you pray. And then basic information about the health risk of using commercial tobacco. Our basic overall message is to stay healthy, and then also educating the general public and a lot of our Native population on how traditionally to use tobacco daily with their family. We want everyone to be healthy and take care of their bodies.
It's a good turnout. I gave tobacco pouches to all the lead singers and the drums that showed up. Thanked them for coming. Then I gave it to Robert Larson Jr. to give the welcome and the prayer before grand entry, and he accepted and did it. So hopefully we get the awareness out there, our message across, and have a good time.
All right, once again, we are honoring our veterans here this weekend, and with the theme of keeping our traditional tobacco sacred.
So our approach to cessation and prevention really is teaching people about not only SEMA, but all of our other medicines. And we hope that as they learn these things, that these teachings will stay with them and they'll continue to use those medicines because they're common. If you look at our property here, we have cedar trees that we planted, we have sweetgrass that we grow in our medicine garden, and we have sage that we grow, and we grow tobacco. So we want the young people to know that, You know, you don't have to be a medicine person to participate in gathering these medicines, taking care of them. It's our right as Indigenous people.
So I think for us, as part of reclaiming our culture, like with lacrosse, it's also maybe learning about the traditional uses of tobacco and how that's different. And I think when they learn about the power of that and, you know, the spirituality and the connection with Mother Earth, you know, they see it differently, and maybe that urge to smoke or use that commercial tobacco is going to be less.
And I believe that it's time to heal and to offer another way, another healthier lifestyle, another way of being Indigenous in this life so that our children can grow up to be healthy and strong and vibrant.
Creator, give me strength so I can move on. Creator, show us love so we can spread around. Communicate with us from above. Hear me now, my prayers